right, welcome back, everybody, to this next edition of Climate Microdose. We are your hosts.
Welcome. It's
How's it
been a
going,
little
Anna?
while.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Fresh face and all.
I know. I shaved my beard because my grandmother recently passed away, and one of her things was just like, if you can show up to my funeral, can you at least shave your beard? So I was like, yeah, of all the things, that's the least I can do. Of course, Grandma, I'll do that. So I did that. The good news is it grows back, so I've heard.
100%. And you can like experiment with a new look for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to look like I mean, that's the thing. I even though it used to be I'd shave my beard and then I would get carded, but now they're just like, no, you're still old, so can we see your ID? So, anyway,
Yeah.
well, it's good to be back. And there's been a lot since we've last been on the air. How have
For
you
sure.
been?
I've been pretty good settling into summer. Well, the solstice is actually this coming Friday, so it's not officially summer, but it has been getting pretty hot here in NYC. And yeah, I'm just excited for the new season and kind of a restart to the year. I feel like happens in summer where we're all prioritizing things and doing a lot of fun climate week planning. So that should be great. But last week, or was it 2 weeks ago now, we were at the UN together. So I'd love to talk about Oceans Week because you were super involved in that, and the programming really blew me away.
Yeah, I think every year Oceans Week is something I look forward to, both at the Explorers Club and at the United Nations. The former, or I guess I forget the actual phrase. I think it's like President Emeritus. I don't know. I probably have that wrong.
Maybe some really funny titles.
It's a very funny title, and it's like it's not. These are not words that we have in our vernacular on every
Yeah,
single day.
yeah.
But
Anymore.
regardless, Ted Janulis, who's our mutual friend, actually that's how we met.
Yes.
He really is kind of
Former
the
guest.
the fearless leader of Oceans Week at the Explorers Club every year, and so it's really exciting to see all the amazing human beings that have come together. And it's always interesting to learn something new. So you might be familiar with the concept of deep sea mining because we've talked about it before. Of course, we've talked about one how it's just detrimental to the environment, and the sales pitches that it's going to help us get to all EVs, which only accounts for 6% of the total carbon budget anyway.
Oh, it's grossly misguided.
It's all misguided, and then even if it were something amazing, it still doesn't make money, the actual business of deep sea mining. So those things, we've beat those things to death, right? I learned something new this time. Did you know that those manganese nodules at the bottom of the ocean are radioactive?
No, what?
Yeah, well, they've got traces of uranium in them, and they also have high amounts of thorium in them, up to 100 to 1,000 times the safe limits for humans.
No, I had no idea. Well, I mean, there's so much in the sea, especially in the bottom of the ocean, that we have no idea about. We've explored, the sea is one of the most unexplored places on our planet. We've explored space more than we have our own ocean. So we don't even know what's in there.
True.
And for it to be radioactive, like that's just crazy. So what's going to happen to all the deep sea mining now? Are they going to become
Godzilla.
Marvel's?
Godzilla's next because
Are they going to
he's
become
the
like a
radioactive
Marvel,
lizard.
the new Marvel like
That was just a
villains?
setup for me to say Godzilla.
I know. I
No,
know.
but it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I was I was really kind of like taken back, and I remember years ago reading that there were these radioactive metals, but I always thought it was just very little. But the new studies, as of I think it was July of 2023, showed that there was 100 to 1,000 times beyond the safe limits for humans. So
Wow, that's crazy.
while it might be encapsulated when they pull it out of the ocean, one of the things that becomes really apparent is that you have to grind these things down to get the metals that you need for your rare earth metals. And so if you're bringing that to, say, the United States, then you've essentially got radioactive materials that are in the air that people could be breathing around this facility that could propose a number of health problems.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, either.
I
That
like
was a
you.
new one by me. So
Wow. What else did you learn? Tell us what else. What
yeah,
is
so
the
I learned
concept?
that, and then of course, the last day, is World Oceans Day at the United Nations, and that's always a really great place to kind of really meet people that have taken time out of their busy schedule to fly to New York. It's great to also see and hear people that are on the stage. But
Hmm.
just like any UN event that I've ever been to, sometimes I feel like the strongest things that happen are in the hallways, or the people that
Sure, of course.
you see that that are actively working on things. And sometimes it's really hard for all of us to peel away from the things we
Hmm.
do every single day to talk with each other. And I think that's sometimes the most important thing. So,
100%.
um, yeah, I had a chance to run into Leah DeOriel from Oceanic Global, talked with her a little bit, and some of the work that they're doing. Ran into John Steele from Nautilus Magazine, and of course, through the week ran into Victor Vescovo and some of these other amazing human beings who have all been working on a number of different ocean related things together. But it's nice to be able to say, where does the dust settle?
Yeah.
And what are some things that we can kind of work on? But I would say the biggest thing was the radioactive nodules. There was also a taping of John Oliver about deep sea mining and how it's
Oh,
just crazy. So that was pretty exciting as well to see that this information is kind of hitting
getting
mainstream.
out there to the
Yeah,
mainstream. Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't know about this. Well, first of all, shout out to Leia and or Oceanic Global. The programming at the UN was just amazing, and I love how they interspersed panels with art and music, and it was just so deep and interesting, and it wasn't boring. It wasn't like, oh my god, get me out of here. All of the panels were a mixture of like old elders in the community, but also like really young voices and climate activists and people like that. So I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and I learned about some new companies that I had no idea about. There's
Oh,
one in particular, I think your colleague, Aqua Acoustics.
mm. That was yeah, Dave Erasmus. Yeah, that's an amazing idea.
I
Tell us
am
about it.
obsessed. I would love for him to come on the show. If you
Oh,
know
I'd
him,
love that.
let's reach out to him because I have so many questions for him. And as you know, my partner works in music, so
Mm.
I was thinking, what if we got some musicians, like some of the biggest names of the day, to intersperse some of this music and sound that he had to help regrow the coral. So for those of you that don't know, they're working on this technology that records the sounds of a healthy coral and also of a coral that's dying, like a whole spectrum of coral health. And then when you play the healthy coral sound and frequency back to the unhealthy coral, the coral that's dying, it actually starts to regenerate just based on the sound and the frequency alone. So that was like a huge aha moment for me. We know the power of music and frequency, and we know that like we are water. So if something is vibrating, we're going to feel a certain way. I feel like the mainstream hasn't 100% embodied that, but I feel like
Right.
on some intrinsic level, like we all know that that's true. Um,
It makes sense
but
to
for
me.
coral,
I mean, if I hear like boom, 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 and it sounds like a party, I'm like, let's go. Let's see what's
I'm
going
ready
on
to
over
go. I
there.
start making margaritas just automatically. It's like that.
That's great. That's why we hang out together.
No, no, but the fact that you can play choral, positive choral music vibes, and it's gonna regenerate, like my mind is absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, no,
You need to get
everybody
your
wants
marketing
positive
back
vibes,
out
even the
there. If
fish.
you're going on vacation and you're gonna be on a boat, you better be blasting this coral reef music.
You know what's funny about that? I know we're joking right now, but I remember
I'm not joking
distinctly.
at all. I 100% serious.
But I think it's interesting because I remember, for some of you that are watching, or the one person that's watching, probably our moms, there were times where we would photograph humpback whales in Tonga, and if you're out there kind of documenting kind of the behaviors of these humpback whales, sometimes you don't see them because, well, maybe they don't want to be seen. And I remember distinctly there was somebody that was on our boat and he had what I call stinking thinking. And I'm just like, oh, it's so irritating. So I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to dance. And so we put on some music and then we made everybody dance. We were like, that's the penalty for stinking thinking. And then before you know it, we were all having a really good time. Some of the other boats started to come around like, what are you guys doing? Like, you guys are just in the middle of the ocean dancing on this boat. And in no time at all, we had a humpback whale come right up to the boat. Almost
Oh
like
wow.
what's this music? So I do think that there's correlation there. I mean, cetaceans are a lot like us in many ways. Um,
Totally.
yeah, and
Maybe not
so
even the music, but the vibration, like the positive, happy vibration that you were able to like elevate on the boat, that maybe drew them closer. Because who wants to be around a bunch of people who are having that stinking thinking and like
100%,
bad
not
mood?
me. Yeah, and on a boat, it's too small of a space to be like that. Like,
For sure.
it's a good
The
way.
planet is too
It's a good
small of a
way to get kicked off the boat. I'm just saying. But so I mean, to me, it made a lot of sense when I heard David talk. I thought that was actually one of the really compelling ideas
Me
of
too. I
ways.
really
Yeah.
was floored by what he was able to showcase and the level of research that he's done. Also, I talked to our mutual friend Stephen Arkea about
Hmm.
coral regeneration, and I'm just kind of like a little pessimistic about it. Maybe after talking to him, and just in general, it seems like regeneration is a harder journey than we thought. So anything that can help me feel like more positive that we can, help the coral come back to full party mode makes me happy.
Yes, yeah, yes and no. So this is something I've struggled with at the same time. So there are some professors. There's also some research out of the University of Georgia that is actively looking at um, the types of corals that would survive high temperature and high pH. Um,
Mhm.
and so there is some discussion about, are there, and I know this sounds horrible, especially how we think of like genetically modified foods, but there are genetically modified organisms that can withstand. And when I say genetically modified, it's on the level of saying genetically modified like an orange carrot, because orange carrots are not natively that color.
Sure,
We as
sure. It's
humans
like
bred them.
crossbreeding,
Yeah,
like what Tim
exactly.
Barber does at Blue Hill.
Right. So
Yeah.
so there are some interesting studies that show, how could we help bridge that particular gap, because it's like the challenge we see with coral restoration as a whole is that you've got this heating ocean. It's absorbing enormous amounts of carbon, and when that happens, then we end up with ocean acidification because it can't keep up, and then that becomes detrimental to coral. So then the question is how do you create something that's resilient? Um, but I think but even before you get to that point, you have to understand, where are we in that stream of time? Are we actively in a situation where it's too late, or did we catch it in time? So having data around that is incredibly important. So yeah, so the project that Steve and I are working on is called the Lighthouse Project. It's a coral reef structure that's about 30 feet tall, and it changes and adapts based off of real-time ocean conditions. And
Yeah,
so
we did a whole episode about
yeah,
it. It was one of my favorite episodes of Climate Microdose. And I love
yep.
that he was at the Museum of Natural History while we were shooting
I
it.
know, right? What a perfect place to be. So I do think that there are some things to worry about, but I do think that there are maybe some slivers of hope at the same time. So
Oh, dear.
yeah. So anyway, so yeah. So I think that was really good. But I think one of the real big kickers of the week is, yes. So in February, the nature restoration law was passed in the European Union, right? But it was getting stonewalled by a number of countries, who will go nameless because now it doesn't matter. We know who you are. You know who you are.
All it
Um,
takes is a quick Google, but we're not here to,
yeah, we're not. We're
trash
not.
talk.
We're not going to climate shame you. That's not what we do here on Climate Microdose. But what's great is that yesterday, thanks to Ireland, they really kind of pushed things forward, and they had the European Union pass the nature restoration at the council level. So laws passed. Now it's been adopted by the council. Good news. What does this actually mean? Well, in short, it means that every country, every company in the European Union
Yeah.
now has to be compliant to the restoration of nature. Now, it does specifically say things like it has to, forests and marine environments around their economic exclusion zones. Each country within the EU will have their different designations, but all in all, it's been approved. Now, this is super significant because for the first time, we have in a big movement. The EU represents about 500 million people or so. So you have a big movement that's focusing on this restoration element of nature as opposed to the extraction of its resources for value. So this is a huge step forward, and it's I think the SEC in the United States will probably come up with some of their own rulings as well. Hopefully, it'll be as
We'll
detrimental as
see.
what we see. What happens if you don't follow in the EU. There's also a question of enforcement. That's the next question that happens. What happens if I'm not compliant? What will I have to pay? So we're working with a bunch of people to try to figure out what are those steps along the way. How can we help people kind of really understand what their liability is, but more importantly, what is there to gain by being compliant for any of these companies. So it's great ultimately because it gets people to realize that the ecosystem is valuable, and on a united front, we can all do something to make a massive change.
Yeah, well, we've talked on the show about how Europe is always kind of leading the way in terms of preserving nature and having nature be part of the balance sheet and the boardroom and things like that.
Right.
And I feel like here in the States, we're always looking to Europe as an example of how we can start making those changes, especially climate-centric companies.
Yeah.
And it's great when governments start to kind of legislate some of this, because it's really hard for the private sector, who's kind of still the underdog in a way. I mean, the climate-focused private sector.
Yeah.
To turn this ship around on its own, right? So we need all governments on board to be able to start making these changes. And then that's what's going to help our other friends at the private sector who maybe care less about the exact ramifications of their actions, but they do care more about, being fine, being compliant, being able to operate and do business in Europe. So that is a huge piece of legislation for global companies. And global companies, a lot of them are based in the States, but they're like, Walmart, PepsiCo, some of these huge global corporations, ExxonMobil.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see the changes that are going to start happening. And it's great to have, companies like yours and a lot of our other friends in the space, help companies understand what kind of changes they need to make and how they can be truly compliant. I'm happy to see it. Any one of these like little glimmers makes me so happy.
Well, I think typically, you either regulations either destroy market or they create one. And why this is very interesting at this point in time. So you've got Microsoft, who previously stated that they're going to spend $1 billion to draw down all the carbon that they've ever put into the atmosphere. Great goal, and that's a lot of money. Apple, I think, has committed 200 million or so, and then you've got Adidas and BMW, Mercedes. These companies all have these varying levels of these things. That's voluntary. This changes everything because now you have a mandatory system that is all geared towards doing this. So this new market, we call, before, we've talked about blue economy, but blue economy kind of got a little dirty with people saying, well, the blue economy can also be oil and gas extraction, or it also can be fisheries. And it's like, probably not the best way to define the blue economy. So, the term now being used is blue natural capital. What is in the ocean that can be determined as capital? And these are things like seagrass meadows, it's mangroves, salt marshes, could be different types of fish, it could be large cetaceans, and so on and so forth. When you start to look at all of this, the thing that I think people are starting to wake up to is the fact that, Captain Paul Watson once famously said, if the oceans die, we die. And while that's somewhat true, I counter that and say, well, if the oceans die, we're not going to die. We're going to suffer. Let's be honest. We're going to be like gasping for air. We're going to try to build synthetic systems that will cost trillions of dollars. Why don't we actually just pay the ocean and the environment to do what it does every single day for us?
Before we get to that place.
And that's really what the nature restoration law helps kickstart that process.
That's really great. And I'm sure you talked a lot about that at the Top Tier Impact Nature Biodiversity Summit.
That's right. Well, that's how we met. We met through Ted Janulis at Top Tier. That's I think I was strong-armed in that meeting by you to become a member immediately, which I think was great because I think you were pretty tough. You were like, okay, who's this guy and why is he here?
It was more about my guest list because I was like, I run a tight ship here. Who is this? But I'll tell you,
who's this guy who crashed my party?
And now you're my BFF. So let the person in, even if you don't know them.
Right. So yeah, so I think that one of the things I was really impressed with the top tier in the very beginning is that as you know, I host something called Ultramarine, and we believe in holding people accountable for goals, not like to shame them, but to say, hey, let's just make sure that we're helping each other to achieve a directive. And top tier does that in many different ways. And I think one of the ways that is really important is to be able to hold those who are funding climate projects accountable. I mean, there are a lot of events that we all go to where people kind of tout themselves as these climate investors, and then they maybe, they just kind of sort of do things. That's not the case so much for the top tier folks. The folks at top tier are really coming together to work hard to make a difference. And so when I find out that there's an event that's happening with top tier, I usually want to go. This event in London was specifically about biodiversity, so the timing was just perfect, right? And with me was Dr. Ralph Chami, who is, he's a former director at the IMF for the last 25 years, has written countless papers with the father of the blue economy, Carlos Duarte, and having him there and seeing him kind of explain some of this stuff to some of the folks in finance was actually really cool. There were some questions that he asked, who knows what CPI is and a number of things. And you could tell that it was a new group that was not real interested in, or not, sorry, I don't want to say interested, but they weren't familiar with a lot of these different types of concepts. So I felt like, having him there was actually kind of nice, is to hear some of his one-on-one conversations with people. And then we had a guy like Roger Ailes, who was there at top tier, who is focused on blue natural capital, but he's an astrophysicist by trade. So how do you bring an astrophysicist to blue natural capital, to investing? This is kind of why I really like top tier. It's like this mixture of all these human beings that say, okay, well, I'm really good at something over here, but I'm going to turn that so that we can all be united on this front. And so, so this was in London, and it was really great to be able to hear what people are working on, some of the concepts, and then also having some of these one-on-one calls. And I'm still following up with some of the people that I met in London. So yeah, it was great.
No, I mean, it's really important because we can sit in these silos, right? Like even in climate, we can just talk to people who agree with us all day, and then we're like, well, I don't understand. Why isn't anything happening? We all here agree, right? But you need to get like the folks who are sitting in a different room and saying that to themselves in a totally different topic together to be able to say, okay, so what's going on with you and what's going on with us, and how can we bring some of the work that we're doing together? And I think that's what TTI does really well, is, make it easy for the folks in the financial aspect and the investor world and all of those kind of more financially and number-minded people to come together with the climate people and understand that we're actually talking about the same thing. Like there is no market economy if there is no like Earth. You know what I mean? Totally. So we have to start to invest our capital and our resources and really like our heart and soul in our work into making sure that the planet is viable. And there's some amazing folks who you just mentioned who are doing that really important scientific research into like how we're going to be able to do that. And now that we have the blueprint for how, now we need kind of like the action piece of like, getting the financial markets on board, getting the private sector on board, getting governments on board. Every single person needs to kind of like raise their hand and start working on this solution, because the clock is ticking.
It is.
I don't want to say it, but it's ticking.
Well, I mean, it is, but that's the case in every clock. That's what all the clocks do, right? So let's just get going. Yeah.
It's true.
So, so it's super exciting, and I think now one of the things that we're actually working on with a bunch of different people that we're actually at the top tier event is really working on tangible valuation systems to be able to show like this is what nature's worth. This is why we think it's important, because we feel like if we can tell that language tell the story with the language of finance, then everyone ultimately understands,
I think so. And that's what's going to kind of like be a magnet for some of the other forces who are maybe not yet like on the board of nature equity. Once they start seeing that the capital is flowing that way, eventually everybody will get, on board.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think, this is an old number, but I remember hearing at one point all ESG assets were worth $43 trillion. and I think that number has increased now that we're starting to look at blue natural capital. So it's a big space. There's room for everybody at the moment, and it's a strategy that also helps a lot of these countries become resilient to economic hardships when there is another pandemic or there's another hurricane that could
Yeah,
ultimately
for sure.
just destroy their existing economic drivers.
Yeah, and we have to start really becoming resistant to that. And what's funny is that nature has been resistant to this on its own without us. It
Yeah.
prevents natural disasters. It prevents endemics. It is actually the best at doing this, and all we need to do is like let it do its thing and protect it so that it can protect us because it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yep. I agree.
Tell me, what are you excited about this summer? What's happening in the world of oceans and climate and the world that's getting you excited for this fun season ahead?
Yeah, so this summer is really the first time that our project, the Ocean Currency Network. We wrote our first lines of code in just this very simple kind of basic thing back in 2018 at the World Economic Forum.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited this year because we've been nominated for a few things, and now we're at a point now where we can actually get our hands dirty, so to speak, and show how to quantify an ecosystem so that it can turn into a nature-based economy. And this summer will be the first time that we've really kind of seen the rubber meet the road. So there's a lot of things that we're going to learn. I know that there's a lot of things that we're probably going to mess up on and iterate, because that's what nature does. Nature doesn't plan at rapid prototypes, as my friend Tom Chi often says. So I'm most excited for that because for the first time ever, we've got groups in the private and public sector that now see the value in this. So I've never seen this before.
Yeah, it's really great to start seeing some of the interest from people that never would be interested before, like start to bubble up. I can feel a shift happening. I
Oh,
really can.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm most excited for that. Second to that, more of a personal thing is I am going to be doing, I think it's a more not summer, but more early fall. We've got a trip that's planned to Tonga to photograph humpback whales. This has been a kind of an ongoing mission in lieu of all the things that I'm doing with the Ocean Currency Network, is to be able to determine what does the ecosystem need to qualify as for humpback whales to feel comfortable to have their babies. That means is like what kinds of sounds are there? What does the water quality look like? Is it clear? Is it turbid? So we're going to be doing a little bit of that this year, and then in November, our plan is to we've got a new film called Bombs Away that we are going to be doing some shooting for, and it's about the work that we're doing in Hawaiian waters to eradicate those waters of chemical and conventional weapons that have been purposely dumped there. So
Yeah.
my role in it is that we're measuring the water column just like we are everywhere else. That's what we do to determine what horrible things are there, and then once those bombs are removed, how does that affect the water? Is it clean? How long does it take for it to kind of zero out? All of these things are super important. So I'm excited to be involved in these projects because I mean, well, let's be honest. I'm now going from this desk to underwater, which I really like a lot because, as Sylvia Earle says, it's no fun being crusty. So when I'm here, I'm crusty. When I'm there, not so much. So I'm really excited to get back in the water and to be able to kind of work on some of these projects.
That's great.
How
Well,
about
we're
you? What are you
really
excited for this summer?
talk to you as all of these, projects emerge. But I'm really excited about, honestly, just doing some grounding. I feel like every summer I'm always like running around and doing 100 things and traveling and like taking care of things and weddings and all of this stuff. And this summer, I don't have a ton of that planned. But I'm going to Maine, which I'm very excited about. I've never been to Maine before, and I hope to meet the local blue economy practitioners there,
Amazing.
really just take a minute to be here and to figure out what the next steps are, and meet with different people and help them tell their stories.
It'll probably be
My
the only place in the United States that's decent weather. Everything
Yeah,
else
I
is
think
going to be
so.
burning
Soon,
hot.
we're going to be in an interesting place with the heat dome, which is something else that we wanted to talk about today. And just hot air being trapped under, conditions where it's not able to move the natural way that it normally would. So it's going to stay hotter for longer. So,
Look at you.
buckle
You're
up.
like Al Roker now.
I did a little research. I wanted to be able to speak to the heat dome and what it was.
100%. 100%. Now, here's what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Maybe I kind of did want to be a weather person growing up. I just thought it was a fun job,
Yeah.
but now it's like a doomsday job in a way. Like if you
Right.
look at the macro conditions, not just the micro, and everybody hates you. So I don't know. I'm very happy to host this show and tell the story of my impact entrepreneurs, which I'm really excited about. But to wrap it up, summer is a great time to connect with nature itself, especially the ocean. And if you've been feeling crusty at your desk, like Jeremy and I have, it's a great time to put your feet in the water and pick up a few pieces of garbage. If you can, please throw them out. The ocean doesn't need that. We really would love to inspire anybody to just pick up the ocean plastic that you see and put it in a waste basket. Even if you can't attend a beach cleanup, I always just try to pick up some garbage. You're going to see it no matter what beach in the world you are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So just any plastic that you can do, and just remember that like this is a gift. Being able to cool yourself off in the waters of the ocean, it really is a gift. And our bodies are made to acclimate to that environment. Like it's so cool that we're waterproof, right? I think it's super
Sure.
cool. No, it like doesn't get enough credit. All on our own,
No
without
short circuiting here.
without any suits. We're already waterproof. So get in there, really feel it, um, and see what you can do. Just little tweaks in your daily life that you can do to connect with it and protect it. And the folks who are working in the government, the folks who are working in climate and the private sector, we're all trying to do our part to protect that, and we need everybody.
I couldn't have said it better. Well,
All
this has
right.
been a great edition of Climate Microdose. I'm glad that we did this today.
Me too. Me too. And happy summer. And hopefully we'll do this soon, and we'll connect with you as you do your travels and everything else. And please write to us if you have any questions. We have some fun guests that we're looking to have on. Alessa from Top Tier Impact. She would be a great guest for us.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we'll see who else we can get for you guys.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of you guys on my LinkedIn, you are all doing some pretty amazing things. I would love to have you guys come on here and talk with Anna and I about some of the things that you're most excited about in the next few months, and maybe we can help bring a whole group of people together in this lovely community. And
We'd
it's been
love that.
great.
Go for a little field trip.
Yeah, that would be awesome too. I'm all for the field trips, especially when we can get in the water.
100%. There would be no field trip without water with you for sure.
100%. Anyway, well, it's great to see you, and it's great to have everybody watching us today. And we'll be in touch. Thanks.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good summer. Stay cool.
Stay cool.